It's time for Security Now with Steve Gibson, episode 272, and a big show today, a new Firefox plugin that lets anybody see what's going on open Wi-Fi networks and then log in as you. Steve's excited about this because he thinks it's going to promote open access point security. He's got a solution, but you're going to have to listen to find out what it is. Security Now is next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Audio bandwidth for Security Now is provided by Winamp. Subscribe to Security Now and all your favorite podcasts with the ultimate media player. Download it for free at winamp.com. Video bandwidth for Security Now is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. You'll find all the Twitch shows on your Roku box, Android, and BlackBerry phones, and all Yahoo Widget TVs powered by MediaFly. For more information, visit twit.tv/MediaFly. This is Security Now with Steve Gibson, episode 272, recorded October 27th, 2010. Firesheep. Security Now is brought to you by Go to Assist Express. If you're in tech support, solve problems fast with the leader in remote support software. Go to Assist Express. For a free 30-day trial, visit gotoassist.com/security. And by Carbonite. Backing up the files on your PC or Mac is safe and easy with Carbonite. For a free trial plus 2 free months with purchase, go to carbonite.com, offer code SecurityNow. And by Ford and voice-activated sync, featuring true hands-free calling, turn-by-turn directions, 911 assist, and more. Available exclusively on Ford, Lincoln, and Mercury vehicles. For more details, visit syncmyridepodcast.com. It's time for Security Now, the show that covers your security online. And no man better prepared to do that, I think, than this man here, Steve Gibson. He is the guy in charge at GRC, the Gibson Research Corporation, grc.com. He's the author of Spinrite, which is a fantastic hard drive utility, a must-have for anybody who has hard drives, but also of a host of free and useful security solutions at grc.com. And he's been doing this show nigh on almost, well, we're on our 6th year, almost 5+ years now.
Well, I guess no one that you could get who's any better who you could get on short notice. So, yeah, I was available.
Short notice? We got you 5 years ago. Hey, Steve, how are you today?
Great, Leo.
Good.
I promised last week that I was going to finally be able to unveil a passion of mine for the last 18 months, the benchmark, the DNS benchmark that I have been working on. And it got preempted, as things are wont to do on our podcast, when something even more fun and sometimes fantastic comes along, as happened this week. We need to talk about something which surprised everybody at a security conference in San Diego this last Sunday, that took everyone by surprise, which is being downloaded at a frenetic pace. 300,000 copies of this little Firefox add-on was where the count was earlier this morning when I began putting my final notes together for this. Last time I looked, it was at 322,000. So in the last couple hours, another 22,000 copies have been downloaded. This is going to, the reason I'm excited about it, the reason we're talking about it, the reason it's my favorite Firefox add-on ever, is that it's wild, and I think it will finally force change. We've talked so often, till we're blue in our virtual faces, about the problem with open Wi-Fi and the lack of SSL security and what it means that logon credentials in the form of cookies are hijackable. Well, until now, it's been arcane. It's been difficult to do. This thing, anyone can run, and it shows you everyone who's using social networking sites, Web 2.0 stuff, in the same hotspot where you are and allows you to hijack their session, logging on as them with a single click.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's big.
Wow. That's amazing.
And we got lots to say about it, lots of news and updates, and a great podcast today.
Very good. Well, we also have
the benchmark in 2 weeks.
We have 3 sponsors today too. So let me start before you get going. I know we've got security news and updates and so forth before we even talk about this extension. Let me talk a little bit about our friends at Citrix and the great product they make for folks who are in support. And I know a lot of you, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, do support. It's called GoToAssist Express. I started using GoToAssist during the screensavers days. We actually used it on the air from time to time. GoToAssist Express is, of course, much updated from those dim, dark days. Faster, better, easier to use, and really more tuned for the support professional. As you would expect from Citrix, these guys really know how to make user software. GoToAssist was just named the worldwide market leader in remote support by Frost Sullivan. That's an industry analyst group that focuses on this sector. They called it the #1 remote support solution worldwide because it's easy to use, it's affordable, it's secure. You don't have to pre-install software on your customer's machine. In fact, I was going to do this. I forgot, Mom. I was supposed to do this on Monday, and I forgot. But all I was going to do is make a Skype call to Mom and then paste in a link to gotoassist.com. She'd click the link, 30 seconds of software install, and I'm in. Not only that, I can remotely assist her from now on unattended. I can do 8 sessions at once. I can find out what operating system exactly, what dot version of the operating system she's running, what security software, what software's running in the background. I could drag and drop files from my computer to hers, so if I've got a patch or a fix. She's on a Mac. I'm on a Mac. We could do it from PC to Mac, Mac to PC, Mac to Mac, PC to PC. It's completely cross-platform. It is a great solution, and I want you to try it free for 30 days. All you have to do is go to the website, gotoassist.com/security, gotoassist.com/security, and you can install this and run it for 30 days and fix as many computers as you can. You can do it 24/7 if you've got the energy. I know that at some point you're going to want to buy it. It's very affordable, but you even can get day passes if you're an occasional support pro. gotoassist.com/security. We thank them for their support of security now. So let us start, I guess, with our security updates here.
Yeah. A couple things. Our listeners will probably, our listeners using Firefox may have noticed that their Firefox jumped up to 3.6.11 if they're on the 3.6 train, or 3.5.14. It's interesting. I thought we had announced, because they had announced that they were going to stop moving 3.5 forward, but they keep doing that. I guess they just haven't had the migration over to 3.6 series that they were hoping for. So they have been continuing to fix 3.5 and moving that forward. This was fixing a bunch of vulnerabilities, 12 in total, 5 of which were rated critical, that is to say, remote code execution vulnerabilities. So in an affected Firefox, Thunderbird, both the 3.1 and the 3.0 train of Thunderbird, and SeaMonkey. So pretty much across the board, that's been fixed. Now, unfortunately, just 2 days ago, that is the Mozilla folks, were informed of a new zero-day vulnerability, which we don't often see in Firefox. In Firefox itself, turns out that there's a mistake in Firefox's implementation of some aspects of JavaScript, which were first seen being exploited on the Nobel Peace Prize website. So people innocent Firefox users who visited the Nobel Peace Prize website were getting malware installed into their machines if they were using XP. The malware has been analyzed, and it looks like it's specific to the Firefox version, so it figures out what version your Firefox is. And this is because when you go to the site, the bad guys have installed, probably using some CSS or cross-site scripting, XSS, some technology, maybe an SQL injection. They got their JavaScript onto the Nobel Peace Prize website. So when that JavaScript runs, it checks the version of Firefox and then it uses that with some version-specific exploits, which Mozilla is now aware of, but for which there is as yet, while we're recording this, no fix to install code on your machine. But it also checks to make sure you're not using Vista or Windows 7, so it looks like it's XP specific. Not much is known about it right now. The problem is both in 3.5 and 3.6, and actually in 4, the as yet unreleased beta of Firefox, although you can't get exploited under 4. What they're in the process of doing is fixing it very quickly. I imagine maybe by the time our listeners hear this, there may be a 3.6.12 and 3.5.15. So, my announcement of this just updated Firefox may already be obsolete. Mozilla's own site says the only thing they know to suggest people do is, not surprisingly, either disable JavaScript or use NoScript to run without scripting by default. But again, had you gone to that site and needed scripting, then you would be in trouble if you turned it on. Now, this is the only place it's been seen. I saw some other reporting saying it is being used at other sites. So, again, NoScript is your friend. Run without scripting if possible. Turn it on only for sites you trust. And with any luck, this will get fixed very quickly. I mean, the Mozilla guys have known about it now for a couple days. They know where the problem is. They're fixing the code across their code base. So the 4 version of Firefox will get fixed, even though it's not vulnerable to the same attack. So it'll get fixed, as part of them fixing their major code base.
Wow.
Real Player we haven't heard about for a long time
because nobody uses it.
Exactly. And I was gonna say my advice is much as it is with Shockwave, which is less needed. Unless you really know you need Real Player, because like your corporate media is only in .rm format or something. Now is a great time to remove it rather than updating it, unless you know you need it. They have released an across the board patches for all of their various annoying versions of Real Media. They've got corporate and executive versions and other stuff. There are 7 remote code exploits which they patch with this. So you could either, if you know you need Real Player, you definitely want to update yourself, because here's the problem. Even if you're not using it, if you installed it 4 years ago and you haven't clicked on any Real Media since then, it's still in your system, and it can be invoked when you go to a malicious website through JavaScript, which is the method of entry here. So it's the kind of thing where unless you really need it, it just represents a vulnerability which you don't need to have. So just go to Add Remove Programs in Windows or over on your Mac and just get rid of this thing, because it's doing nothing for you if you're not actively using it, except creating a vulnerability that you could, well live without at this point. And as you said, Leo, no one is using Real Media anymore. I mean, if I see something that I really want, and it's like
which frequently happens with like older sites and stuff,
and it's like
crazy.
Too bad. I know I'm not gonna view that, whatever it is, because it's just not worth it.
Yeah,
it's a bad viewer. And just a note that Google, very much under the radar as always, has continued to creep Chrome forward. They fixed some more things. We don't know what, but Google moved to version 7.0.517.43. So fixing things as they do with their sort of low drama, low disclosure continuous self-repairing on-the-fly security updating. Adobe is in the doghouse yet again with a...
Hard to believe.
I know, it's a big surprise.
How could this happen?
I think we skipped them last week, but that
One week off.
They got a week off.
Jeez
exactly.
Louise.
They've got a 0-day vulnerability, and the good news is it's in Shockwave Player, which again, you probably can live without. Once upon a time, if you were a Windows user who looked under Add Remove Programs, the naming, that is the nomenclature they used for describing Flash and Shockwave, was confusing. The good news is they've simplified it. If you look under Add Remove Programs, it'll just say the one you want is, and probably can't live without, I mean, I can't live without it even on my iPad, unfortunately, I'm forced to, is Adobe Flash Player 10. That's what you'll see. Adobe Flash Player 10 plugin and Adobe Flash Player 10, ActiveX or something. That's what you need. Anything that now says Shockwave is vulnerable to a 0-day problem. There is no update for it. So if you have to have Shockwave, then running with no script, again, scripting is the way all of these things get invoked. So running with no script will provide you some protection until Adobe is able to catch up and fix it. You can go, if you want to see whether it's installed, go to adobe.com/shockwave/welcome. And it'll show you what version you have if it's installed, or try to give it to you if it's not. Don't accept it if you don't have it installed. You'll just know if it doesn't show you what version you have that you're safe from it. Then you can also just go to Add Remove Programs. And again, it's one of those things like, it's falling into disuse. It's their sort of higher power authoring platform for really sort of heavyweight fancy stuff, sort of higher end above what Flash does. Flash is generally, of course, what everyone is using to a much greater degree. So again, very much like Real Player, Shockwave is aging and is falling into disuse. And obviously here it's representing problems because it's creating vulnerabilities, which unless you need to have it installed, just get rid of it.
It's funny, the new Apple the MacBook Airs, for the first time ever on a Mac, don't come with Flash. And really, the reason is probably just that if they build it in, it'll be an old version. And since there's so many updates these days, they figure, well, if you need it, you'll just install it. Some people are interpreting it as a backhanded slap at Adobe.
Or maybe a four-handed slap.
But I also understand. Okay, so they ship it with Flash on it. Tomorrow, there could be a big security flaw, and it could be updated. So wouldn't it be better just to let people install? And they do the same thing with Java, by the way. There's no Java installed on it. Let people install it, the most up-to-date version. I haven't installed it yet.
Well, and I was just going to mention that, speaking of Java, one of my notes here in news is that Apple has formally said they're going to stop independently supporting and providing Java in the future.
Right. They used to do their own JVM, and so they're going to let Sun do it. Well, and why not?
Exactly.
Why take responsibility, especially now that there have been problems?
Well, and they're going a little further. They're saying that they're going to reject any apps written in Java in the future.
See, this bothers me.
Yeah, on their App Store. Yeah. If it's this is going along with their same on the iPhone issue. Remember, Adobe tried to do the whole cross-platform app development thing, and Apple said, no, you got to develop using our tools, not some third-party interpreter thing. Right. Their argument is that such apps that try to be cross-platform don't take advantage of specific features on that platform. So Jobs is taking a very hard line on this, and this is very much along the same lines. Java itself falls in under that same umbrella of being an interpreter, and Apple is saying, no, we're not going to allow people to do less than really good apps, by their definition. So yes, so Java will not in the future be supported. I guess what 10.7 will have it, but not the future, or does 10.7 not have it?
I would guess it's not, because 10.7 is not out till next summer. So I would guess it's 10.7. But it doesn't come on these new Macs either. But that doesn't mean you don't get Java. It means you could just install it yourself from Sun.
Right. And what typically happens is you'll install an application which was written in Java, and so its installer will drag Java along behind it in order to create the platform that it needs for running.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, no one just goes and gets it because they have nothing better to do that day.
I went and got it, and that's because I wanted to do development for Android, which requires not only the JVM but also the SDK.
But this is you, Leo.
That's me.
Yeah.
That's a little unusual. I agree. Yeah.
Okay, so Wall Street Journal has for some time now been doing a series titled, under the umbrella title, What They Know.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
I just had to breathe a sigh. Oh, you got to remember, they own, they're owned by News Corp, which owns MySpace. So they got a little bit, and they never disclaim that. I wish they would.
Yeah, it's funny because they did mention that in one of these stories that the New York Times owned one of the properties that was being hit upon here. So in the latest story on tracking, the Wall Street story begins, in the weeks before the New Hampshire primary last month, Linda Twombly of Nashua, New Hampshire, says she was peppered with online ads for Republican Senate hopeful Jim Bender. It was no accident. An online tracking company called Rapleaf Inc. had correctly identified her as a conservative who is interested in Republican politics, has an interest in the Bible, and contributes to political and environmental causes. Ms. Twombly's profile is part of Rapleaf's rich trove of data garnered from a variety of sources and which both political parties have tapped in the past. Rapleaf knows even more about Ms. Twombly and millions of other Americans, including their real names and email addresses.
And where does it get this information?
It turns out that they do deals with companies which use email addresses as part of their sign-on, log-on user IDs. So that when you sign on to one of these sites, Rapleaf, and it's funny, I've been thinking of them as Rape Leaf, and I have to keep reminding myself, Rap, Steve, Rap.
Might be appropriate, yeah.
Yeah. Rapleaf has a deal with them where they will disclose through a back channel connection your email address and the cookies that you're using with that site, whereupon Rapleaf installs their own tracking cookie that are synchronized, and now they have your email address. They also, of course, have what other personal information that site has about you, including perhaps your real name, if you've identified yourself at some point to that site. So they are, this is what we knew was going on. We've talked about it before. It's finally getting, some top of the fold press now, which is, I think, all for the best, because people have to understand, what's going on.
But the thing to underscore is, in fact, as far as I know, in every case, this is material that they've publicly volunteered, and for instance, a lot of this is gleaned from Facebook, which is why I brought up MySpace.
Yes,
and it's from stuff that's public on Facebook. So,
well, although what it turns out is, and this was another story under the same umbrella, it turns out that the top 10 Facebook apps, even against the privacy settings that the user has set, a user on Facebook who's using maximum privacy everywhere, the top 10 Facebook's apps, unfortunately, Leo, Farmville is among them, is sending.
Don't look at me. I don't play Farmville.
Oh, I thought.
No, I gave up Farmville literally a year ago. It would drive me crazy.
What was that thing?
I play We Rule. That's not Facebook and Farmville. That's a standalone app on iPad.
Okay, but what was the thing you were playing? You went nuts over with the iPad.
Yeah, that's We Rule. I don't play Farmville.
Oh, okay.
In fact,
anyway.
I don't actually use apps on Facebook for this reason. But the point is, and I think the Journal actually was disingenuous on this. They did, against Facebook's own policy, reveal the user ID in some cases.
Correct.
Which can then be tracked to the user, but only information that is public, that is set to public, can then be viewed. So this isn't information that isn't already available to anybody who just goes and searches for you on Facebook.
Okay.
That's the point.
So using your user ID, you're able to get the person's Facebook name.
Right, which you could find by a search as well.
But and also their friends?
No, that is something that is leaked by apps, and that I think is a big problem. And I don't think that's against the rules. I think that's something that apps do all the time.
Okay. So Rapleaf declined to disclose who they're working with, citing NDAs.
Guarantee it's Facebook.
Exactly. Non-disclosures.
Yeah.
But the Wall Street Journal found sites installing Rapleaf cookies, including about.com, ping with 2 Gs.com, TwitPic, and Pixley, and Flickster, Tester Rewards, and then both apps on Facebook and MySpace are hosting Rapleaf cookies, essentially performing this kind of aggregation. And to give our listeners a sense for what this means, the Wall Street Journal reported saying the Journal decoded Rapleaf's information on some random guy named Gordon McCormack Jr., a 52-year-old who lives in Ashland, New Hampshire. Rapleaf correctly identified Mr. McCormack's income range, the number of cars he owns, his interests in gardening and the Beatles, and his interest in playing the online game Mafia Wars, among other topics. Mr. McCormack says he plays Mafia Wars almost every day before going to bed. Rapleaf also identified Mr. McCormack as someone with an interest in online personals. He says he isn't currently doing online dating, but might have a couple of profiles, quote, lurking out on the internet, unquote.
Okay, all right, okay.
When Mrs. Twombly, a New Hampshire Republican, registered at ping.com, P-I-N-G-G, using her email address, Rapleaf matched her to dozens of segments, as they call them, according to a Journal analyst of the computer code transmitted while she was on the site. The Wall Street Journal, was able to decode 26 of the segments, including her income range and age range, and the fact that she's interested in the Bible and in cooking, crafts, rural farming, and wildlife. Ms. Twombly says all the decoded segments describe her accurately. In Mrs. Twombly's case, Rapleaf transmitted data to her to at least 23 other data and advertising companies after she logged onto Ping, according to the analysis of the computer code. 22 companies, including Google's Invite Media, confirmed receiving data from Rapleaf. Rapleaf declined to comment on its relationships with the companies. And then I did a little poking around Rapleaf, and of course, there is an opt-out page. You have to create an account with them.
Oh, great. And give them all the information. Yeah.
And give them your information, including your email address, in order to opt out. And it's like, oh, okay, this seems annoying. And due to all the attention that this company has received, thanks to the Wall Street Journal's analysis, there's a note, there's a link on the front page, not surprisingly, www.rapleaf.com, to a blog posting from their CEO that starts out, there has been a lot of press recently about Rapleaf's efforts to personalize experiences for consumers. The following are some thoughts by Rapleaf CEO Orrin Hoffman. Anyway, I love and they're big on, well, we're trying to personalize your web experience.
Here's the value, right?
Yeah, and here's all the money we're making by helping you doing that.
a couple of things we should point out. First of all, this kind of information. I remember doing a radio show with a company, I can't remember its name, 20 years ago, where if I gave you my zip code, they'd know what magazines I subscribed to, what car. Because
yeah, we should probably double-click, Leo.
Yeah, a lot of this, well, no, it was pre-internet. A lot of this stuff has been, a lot of this stuff has been available and known to marketers for decades, literally for decades. The other side of this is, I guarantee you this guy, for instance, all of this stuff is public stuff that he's put publicly on the internet.
Right.
So I guess it's a good word of warning to us if you don't want people to know this stuff. They are collecting it. I'm not sure that they're doing it in a nefarious way. They're using databases to aggregate information that we're putting out there.
Yeah, and so, you know, the takeaway in the case of Mrs. Twombly, she was unhappy when she found out what was being done and started blocking cookies and commented that some sites didn't work as well as they used to.
Yeah.
But she was, you know, she was unnerved.
It ain't cookies, lady. It's your if you have a Facebook profile that reveals all this stuff.
Yep.
Well, you shouldn't be surprised that somebody else knows it.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yep.
Anyway, sorry.
Sans, the very good, the excellent security cybersecurity outfit, in their most recent newsletter, they had a quote from a recent RSA Europe conference where our Homeland Security Secretary Michael Chertoff said something that I found a little bit disturbing. I wanted to share with our listeners. Quoting from the SANS newsletter, at the recent RSA Europe conference held in London, former U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Michael Chertoff has called on countries to develop doctrines to deal with cyber warfare in the same way Cold War doctrines were developed for nuclear conflict. He told delegates at the conference that over 100 countries are now actively involved in cyber espionage and cyber attacks, and that clear rules of engagement need to be defined, while stating that countries should be able to respond to cyber attacks, quote, with overwhelming force, unquote. He added countries need not, quote, respond to virtual attacks with real attacks, but I do think it's important to define when and how it might be appropriate to respond. Everyone needs to understand the rules of the game, unquote. Acknowledging that attribution of attacks is difficult, Mr. Chertoff posited that countries that are victims of persistent attacks against their critical infrastructure should be permitted to incapacitate the platform used as the source of the attack, regardless of who is controlling the attack, unquote. Which really makes me uncomfortable, Leo.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, so he's saying that internet attribution is a problem, which we understand. That is to say, you know, the fact that attacks, you know, are coming from IP addresses in China, as we well know on this podcast, in no way means that this has anything to do with China, only that, you know, a whole bunch of their machines have had zombies installed unwittingly, and that those machines are being used as the attack platform.
So they should be able to take them out with a predator drone?
And Chertoff is saying, you know, at some point, this stuff does need to cross from the virtual world into the real world.
This is saber rattling. I don't know.
I know. Just disturbing. That there's this, and I have to say though, I saw another note that the UK was finally beginning to allocate serious money for cyber warfare, cyber defense initiatives. The feeling in general is, I mean, and I still feel like I'm a little caught up in a little bit of a sci-fi world here, but I mean, it's becoming very real as we talk about, for example, you know, Trojans that are able to infiltrate nuclear reactor sites. It's really clear that, I mean, look at all the trouble people have keeping this stuff off their own computers. And we know that the government is no better at it than individual end users.
Right.
I mean, there really is penetration being made into sensitive networks.
You have to think if they're going to start taking out these computers, that they're going to take out a lot of innocent people.
Yeah, it's frightening.
And people who are just zombied without their knowledge.
And France has passed and begun to enforce their newest anti-privacy law. The acronym is HAPOPI, HAPOPI, and they've hired a third-party company in order to enforce this, because they're not the enforcers themselves. The law is now in place that provides for enforcement. So a third-party company has been has been hired to monitor popular downloading sites like eMule and BitTorrent, to capture the IPs of the users of the sites, to send those, and we're talking 125,000 a day is what they're ramping up to, send the captured IPs to the relevant ISPs to obtain the email addresses of the people who currently have those IPs, and send them a first warning email, which reads, "Warning, your internet connection has been used to commit acts recognized by police authorities which could be regarded as in breach of the law." So the first email reminds users that they're legally responsible regardless of who actually downloaded the film or song onto their machine. And if there's another infraction within 6 months, it offers, then offenders will receive a registered letter warning them to stop downloading. Then a third offense can lead to legal proceedings and 1-year internet connection blackout. So France is the first big country to actively adopt a law and start enforcing it, and a lot of other countries are watching to see how this goes.
Yeah, and a lot of other countries are considering a similar law. So
yeah, exactly.
Scary.
I had a friend for errata who suggested he was using Safari's private browsing, and he sort of assumed that when he turned on private browsing, he would suddenly go anonymous. What he realized exactly, what he realized was that what it meant was that from that, while in private browsing, nothing that happened during that session of private browsing would be sticky. Nothing would be, for example, written to disk. But going into private browsing didn't immediately anonymize you from your non-private browsing session. In fact, you brought all your cookies with you that you would have had before browsing. It's just that anything that happened during that time was not saved. And he said, Steve, might be worth pointing that out to people who assumed that they were anonymous while using private browsing. I thought, yeah, that's a really good point. Ought to mention that. And then also in errata, we were talking about IP space depletion as probably being next year's recurring theme and news. Ars Technica carried an interesting story where they mentioned that one of the major /8 networks, in this case the 45 network, meaning all 16 plus million IPs beginning with 45 dot. So 45 dot anything, they were previously all allocated to Interop. And Interop gave back to Aaron 99% of them just now. Just
as we were asking, couldn't they just ask for these back?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it was, so there's no provision for Aaron to force unused IPs back. Apparently, behind the scenes, Aaron is going around to people who have huge allocations from the original allocation of the first digit of the IP, and saying, hey, you're not really using all 16 million of those. And
give us a few back, just a few.
Really like to have some. Now, there was an interesting chart. I provided the link to you in our notes, Leo. On that page is a really nice map which shows the allocated networks and those which are still not allocated. So the free ones are 5, 23, 37, 39, 100, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106.
It looks like a bingo chart.
It does. 179 and 185.
And then there's a bunch of unusable ones, 127 and 224 and up.
Yep, 224 and up.
And of course, 10
is unusable. That's the whole 10 dot RFC 1918 reserve network.
Right.
And interestingly, despite Interop doing this was very nice. What it bought us was 1 month. So giving back 99% of a full /8 network bought us a month. So we're in trouble.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I have a very short note from a happy user of Spinrite that I want to share, Diane Dunnett, who wrote, and just very quickly, she said, she called it GRC post-sales statement. She said, GRC, I've used my copy of Spinrite 6 to correct 2 of my home computers. One that would not load into Windows after the Windows scrolling bar screen, whatever she meant by that, after the Windows scrolling bar screen. And then she said, and the other with a Windows registry Hive error that kept it from booting.
Oh, yeah.
Spinrite has, without a doubt, saved my bacon.
That's great.
Thanks so much.
That's great. Yeah, those Hive errors are horrible.
Oh, boy, yes. I've had them and you've had them.
Yeah, well, it's just this opaque binary blob that you can't fix. So obviously there was a bad sector somewhere in that blob, and Spinrite was able to recover the sector, which is great. Yeah. Hey, before we get into the topic of the day, our Firesheep, let me take a little break and mention Carbonite.com. You know, we talk about backup all the time. Spinrite, of course, is a great tool to have, but if you haven't been backing up, you're putting all your eggs in the Spinrite basket. I know Steve would agree with me. Maybe it'd cost him a sale or two. I doubt it, but maybe it'd cost him a sale or two if everybody would just back up. But it sure would save people a little bit of craziness and heartache. And that's why I like Carbonite so much. Carbonite is automatic backup, so you don't have to think about it. You know, there are a lot of backup solutions that you have to remember. Oh, every Sunday I'm going to back up or whatever. This is not that. This does it all the time whenever you're online. And because it uses a 128-bit SSL, it is not prone to attacks like Firesheep. You're absolutely secure even if you're in an open access point and doing the backup. I think I'm right, Steve, right? Firesheep won't get through SSL.
Nope. And in fact, no.
Good. All right. It also does allow additional encryption using AES. Actually, I've been saying AES, and I think I stand corrected. I know Carbonite Pro uses Triple Des and Blowfish, which is just as good. So whatever. It uses strong encryption, and only you have the passcode. So you're absolutely secure in that way as well. And it's unlimited backup for all the personal files on your internal drive. It doesn't include external drives or network mapped drives, that kind of thing. It's your internal drive. I mean, after all, they're giving you unlimited backup. That doesn't mean 1,000 petabytes of data, but whatever you can have on your internal drive, and that can be many, many, many gigabytes, all safe, all secure for $55 a year. It's really worth it for the peace of mind. Now, I want you to try it free for 2 weeks. I always encourage you to try these free, and that's one of the reasons we get all of our sponsors, well, with one exception. Ford hasn't yet figured out how to give you a free car. But all of our sponsors do offer you 2 weeks or a month free, so you can see if this is right for you. Please try it. Go to Carbonite.com, use the offer code SECURITY. Try it free for 2 weeks. See if it works for you. See if you like it. And then if you decide to buy, continue to use that offer code SECURITY for 2 months off. 2 months free. Carbonite.com. Use the offer code SECURITY. It's backup done right, and it sure is peace of mind. You can still buy Spinrite, but at least this way you won't have all your eggs in the Spinrite basket. All right, let's talk about Firesheep.
Okay, so this last Sunday, on the 24th of October, the the TourCon 12 annual security conference occurred from Friday through Sunday. And there were a number of presentations, as there are at these security conferences. I got a kick out of two of them that our friend Sammy Kankar, who is, of course, notorious for his creation of the Ever Cookie. I love the title of his. I didn't bother to go dig into what it was, but the title was How I Met Your Girlfriend.
Okay, it sounds like a sitcom.
Exactly. I got a kick out of the title of his How I Met Your Girlfriend. You know, and you can imagine at a security conference, it's something you didn't do right.
Get your attention, yeah.
Gave him access to her. And then Julia Wolf's had my favorite presentation title. It was all caps with underscores, OMG underscore WTF underscore PDF.
Say no more.
Say no more. OMG WTF PDF.
I love it.
But at noon on Sunday, the last day of the conference, Eric Butler and Ian Gallagher, both security guys who operate out of Seattle, Washington, delivered their presentation, which pretty much brought the house down. It was titled, Hey, Web 2.0, Start Protecting User Privacy Instead of Pretending to. And the description of their presentation online is worth sharing. This is what they wrote ahead of time. It says, despite growing public concern over web privacy, especially within social networking sites, companies including Facebook, Twitter, and even Google all fail to protect users against session hijacking attacks. These attacks are nothing. Session hijacking is one of the oldest, simplest, and most widely known attacks against the web. An interested attacker can view your private Facebook photos, broadcast tweets as you, see your web history, and anything else you can do while logged into your own online accounts. We're bringing up this tired issue to remind people of the risks they face, especially when on open Wi-Fi networks, and to remind companies that they have a responsibility to protect their users. To drive this point home, we are releasing an open source tool at TourCon 12, which shows you a buddy list of people's online accounts being used around you and lets you simply double click to hijack them.
Okay.
This is fantastic, Leo.
You think this is good?
Oh, this is the best thing that ever happened. This is if I had a different security profile than I do, this is what I would write.
Wow.
I can't write it, but I can cheer it. This is great because this is finally going to really this is what it takes to force change.
Yeah.
You know, we're never going to move from IP4 to IP6 until we run out of IPs.
Right.
We're never going to get online Web 2.0 sites to just switch over to SSL exclusively until they have to. And this makes them do it.
You know, when I used to go on, I still do. I go on geek cruises with a guy named Randall Schwartz. You know Randall. He's a pro programmer. He does our This Week in Open Source Floss. And he's also a hacker from years gone by. And we got him to stop doing this, but it was the same thing. It was very effective. I'll never forget the first time I was on a cruise with him, he came up with me and gave me a piece of paper. He said, "Is this your email password?" I said, "What?" He said, "You're sending it in the clear every time you're on the ship's Wi-Fi. Just thought you should know." Same idea, right?
Well, yes. And look at the trouble Google got themselves into by capturing unencrypted Wi-Fi. I mean, just driving around. They weren't even doing it. Okay, so to frame this a little better, consumeraffairs.com today wrote, quote, computer security specialists have issued a warning about Firesheep, a new downloadable add-on to the Firefox browser. If a person in a coffee shop with you has it, they can see exactly what you're doing online. The feature was reportedly created by a Seattle software developer whose purpose was to demonstrate how vulnerable unsecured networks are. Unfortunately, he's unleashed a tool that can turn a computer amateur into an accomplished hacker. With Firesheep, a computer user can log on to a public network in an airport or coffee shop and get a list of all the computers that happen to be connected to the network at that moment, simply by double-clicking on one of the names. I mean, this thing, it shows you a list of all the users on your Wi-Fi hotspot, the social networks they're using, and their pictures, which it goes and retrieves from their Facebook page and MySpace and anything else, Twitter, for example, and literally you browse them. You click this, and I'm going to explain how in detail in a second, but you're then them. You're logged on as them to their Facebook page, to their MySpace domain, to their Twitter account, able to do anything they are. This is chaos, Leo. This is fantastic.
You're sounding like a black hat. What's amazing is how easy it is to use. I mean, you have this extension installed, and you just see the list.
That's the point.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, yes, you could be a Linux user with Cain enable, and you could type a bunch of arcane crypto commands and see this stuff going on. I mean, I've done that. You know, I mean, it's possible. But this is a game changer because of how easy this makes it. Now, when I went there this morning, there were 300,724 downloads. Can you click the link now?
Holy cow! Wow. Yeah. Let me go back to it and see how many there are now. This is at GitHub. He's not, by the way, an official Firefox extension.
Correct.
He does not offer it through Firefox. They probably had to block it. 325,985 downloads.
Okay, so since this morning, another 25,000 downloads. Mozilla is on record as saying of this extension that, well, this is not a Firefox vulnerability.
Right.
This is, you know...
Any browser could do this, right?
Yes, and in fact, the cat's out of the bag now. If Firefox were to block it, it's trivial to create a standalone application that will do this, and I'm sure we're going to see one shortly. There's just no doubt about it.
Now, this works because these passwords are being set in the clear.
Well, no, and that's what session hijacking is. We'll talk about it in 1 second. So just to finish the consumer affairs story, they said simply by double-clicking on one of the names, the Firesheep user can access whatever the computer user is doing online. If they're updating their Firefox account, the Firesheep user is also logged in. Firesheep works by intercepting internet cookies, which websites place on your computer when you visit, so they will recognize you when you return. Professional hackers have had the tool in their arsenal for years. Now, thanks to Firesheep, anybody that has downloaded the add-on can do it too. And so here's the deal. You, on all these sites, they switch you to SSL to log you in. But then they give your browser an unsecure cookie, take you back out of SSL just because they can. They don't have to, but they do. And now that cookie is the way your session is authenticated. That is the only way you're identified. So anybody sniffing your unencrypted traffic, which all traffic is at an open Wi-Fi hotspot, has long been able to use that cookie, pick up that cookie, which is sent with every request your browser makes. That's the way that's your entire session state, is that cookie, just some random gobbledygook, doesn't matter what it is. All a third party has to do is use that cookie, and they are indistinguishable from you at that, at that location. And even your IPs are the same because you're all being natted through a single IP out onto the internet. So there's, you look just like the person sitting next to you at Starbucks. So currently supported is Amazon, Basecamp, Bitly, Enom, Facebook, Foursquare, GitHub, Google, Hacker News, Harvest, the New York Times, Pivotal Tracker, Twitter, TourCon, Evernote, Dropbox, Windows Live, Cisco,
all the stuff I use,
SliceHost, Gowalla, and Flickr. And coming soon is Yahoo, eBay, LinkedIn, Dig, Reddit, Wikipedia, Blogger, GoDaddy, Posterous, Tumblr, Netflix, YouTube, Flashdot, MobileMe, PayPal, Salesforce, Craigslist, MySpace, Match, and AOL.
This is terrible.
It's fantastic.
Holy cow. I mean, okay. Go ahead.
So first of all,
I'm terrified.
Some of this is a bit of an exaggeration. For example, PayPal is on the coming soon. But PayPal never has you in the clear. I don't think even using SSL strip, which would remove the HTTPSs from the links, I don't think PayPal will function. And we know that PayPal is an early adopter of STS, the Strict Transport Security Protocol, which, for example, Mozilla is supporting. And what in Mozilla's formal comments, they said about this add-on, they said, well, this is not a mistake in Firefox. This is because sites are not using SSL to transact session state in cookies. You may, if we turn the clock back a few years, you may remember that at one point I was needing to allow my employees, Greg and Sue, to roam away from home where I had them locked down for secure access to GRC. I wanted them to be able to roam around. And what I used was a feature that browsers have always had where cookies can be tagged as SSL only, so that when the cookie is given to the browser, there's a flag that's just called secure equals, and you say secure equals 1 or yes or something. And so the browser tags it. It will never send it out unless the session is secure. So part of my means for secure, where Sue, for example, could be using an open Wi-Fi hotspot. First of all, GRC enforces SSL for these things and never accepts a non-SSL connection. But even so, the cookies that we use for maintaining state are tagged as SSL only, that if anything, for example, if strip SSL were used to strip that out, even though at my server side I refuse to accept a non-SSL connection, so even strip SSL wouldn't work, the browser at that location would never divulge the session state over a non-SSL connection. So, it is entirely possible, it's not rocket science, just to force SSL. It's just all of these sites are not doing it. They're switching people back over. And I'm excited about this, obviously, because this is going to create major ripples. I mean, the idea that, there will be 500,000 of these things downloaded by tomorrow. This thing is going to take off like wildfire. People are going to experiment with it. They're going to load it into Firefox, go to Starbucks, and say, wow, it works. Maybe mischief is going to be created by this. I imagine some will be. I would never, ever touch anyone's, web, Facebook site settings or anything. Unfortunately, not everyone are you and me, Leo. Immediately, people like Amazon. Amazon is guilty too of taking us back out of SSL for, when we've discussed this before with Amazon, important transactions are back to SSL. In fact, just like last month, I was talking to Mark Thompson about this. He's working on a project, and we were talking about security, and he had looked closely what Amazon does and mentioned to me that Amazon took you back out of SSL, and it was only for things that mattered. And I said, Mark, listen to me. Absolutely, without equivocation, never accept a non-SSL connection. There is no reason in this day and age not to always be using SSL. He's doing something where there will be sensitive information. And I said, just from day one, never make this mistake. Always be SSL all the time for the kind of stuff he's doing. And I think I made the point with him, so that's the way his system will be designed. These other companies are just gonna have to make the change. I mean, and we're talking within days. This is huge. And this represents a major positive lesson. Now that this exists,
it's called a spanking.
I mean, this is really big.
Oh, it's scaring the hell out of me. Let's talk a little bit about. I presume you have some suggestions besides. Well, yes. I don't know. Do you have some things to say? Are we done? Is that all you're going to say, or are you going to give us some?
I have some more tips after our third sponsor.
Let's take a little break, and we're going to come back and talk more about Firesheep. Didn't mention Google in that list. I guess that's because Google is SSL, yes, the whole time?
And Gmail went SSL.
Yeah, now you know why.
Yep.
Wow, this is really, really, really interesting. And I'm sure there are things we can do, and there's obviously a big lesson to be learned here, but we'll talk more about that in a sec. Right now I want to talk about our friends at Ford, the great Ford cars, the American-made technology that is beaten everyone else all around the world. I'm pretty proud of that. I know we have listeners all around the world. And by the way, the new Ford Focus, which is Ford's international. This is a very bold thing Ford's doing. Ford has always been popular all around the world. You see Ford Fiestas everywhere and so forth. They are going to try something a little different. They're making the Ford Focus for next year, which will be one design, one body style for the entire world. It's a world car. And it's a really slick car. And I cannot wait to see how all around the world people receive this car and receive the Ford Sync, because that is the technology that it just blows me away. It's true hands-free calling, turn-by-turn directions, 911 assist, music search, traffic alerts. You don't have to have a big screen GPS. Those are optional in most cars, most Ford, Lincoln, and Mercury vehicles, and I have one in my 2010 Mustang. But you don't have to have that. If you've got the Sync, it has a GPS built in, and it will give you turn-by-turn directions. It even knows your route and will reroute you if traffic is bad. So it gives you traffic alerts of what's ahead. On some phones, it will read you your text messages. It does on my Android, my Droid X. So I can turn this off, obviously, but if I want, it'll alert me a new text message has come in, and it'll read it to me if I say so. And again, your hands don't leave the wheel, your eyes don't leave the road. It's a safety feature, but you are no longer kind of disconnected as you have been in the past once you get in the car. People want to stay connected, and Ford lets you do it. Listen to your podcasts. I press a button on the wheel, and I say, play Security Now 272, and it's playing. All the Ford Sync vehicles have USB connections, work with all the iPods and iPhones and iPads even. The Bluetooth, streaming Bluetooth from any A2DP device, which is all the Apple devices, the Android devices. So I get in the car and I don't have to even plug in. I can listen to my book, my audio book. I can listen to my music, and I can command it. It's just really slick. You can find out more if you go to syncmyridepodcast.com. But the best way to do it, I said Ford is the only sponsor that doesn't give you a free trial. But I guess you can always you do in a way, because you can always go to a Ford dealer or a Lincoln dealer or a Mercury dealer and say, hey, I'm interested in Sync. I want to take a ride. And they will let you, and you will be able to use it. syncmyridepodcast.com to find out more. Ford is just we went out there the Dearborn plan, and I'm just really excited about what they're up to. syncmyridepodcast.com. Take a look at Ford Sync today. And if you take a look at the new Edge, they've got the new MyFort Touch with the 3 screens, the 8-inch screen. Just really slick stuff. All right, let's get back to security now. Steve Gibson has been telling us about a Firefox extension. It's on GitHub. It's not on the official extensions page, but if you search for Firesheep, you'll find it right away.
Yep. If you just Google Firesheep, you'll find it on GitHub and a bunch of stories about it.
You said not to install it. You told me not to install it.
I'm going to install it.
It's a little buggy.
Yes, it is. It is raw. It's 0.1. It's the code that they released at the show on Sunday. They're in the process. It's right now supported for Windows and Mac. For Windows, you need to install the WinPCap sniffing library, thanks to me, actually, because Windows doesn't have raw sockets.
Oh.
Which is what WinPCap provides.
Oh, how interesting.
But
you don't need to do that on the Mac, huh?
Correct. The Mac does support standard Unix raw sockets.
Oh, interesting.
And so it's able to sniff. I saw a note from the developer that he's got it running under Linux, so he's in the process of getting it up under Linux.
So if my understanding is correct, let me just to recap. People are tuning in or whatever. You install this extension. You go anywhere where there's an open access point. Anywhere, a coffee shop, Starbucks, whatever, and it will show you on the left.
Or driving down the street, Leo, also.
Yeah, actually, there's a lot of open access points all around the street. So it will show you, on the left, there's a bar opens up, and it will show you other people sharing that open access spot with you and what they're logged into.
Yes. The idea is it's sniffing the traffic just the way Google did when they were roaming around doing their mapping. It sniffs all the traffic that's available on the Wi-Fi at that access point. It looks at the transactions. It sees www.facebook.com, twitter.com, amazon.com, New York Times, Foursquare, and so forth. It has a little bit of JavaScript which tells it how to interpret those specific sites that it knows about, and it has a separate file of handlers which is growing now as it's becoming more able to deal with additional sites. And so what it does is it starts populating like a list on like a sidebar of all the things that people are doing on that Wi-Fi hotspot. Their name, it goes and shows you their photo, so you can sort of turn around and go, oh yeah, there he is over there on the side. So
it pulls these photos from Twitter or Facebook or Flickr or wherever the profile photos exist,
right? Because it knows everything about them. It's able to it's able to log in as them, get that information, and then you simply, if you want to impersonate them, literally hijack their session. You just double click on it and you're logged in as them on their Facebook
it does
page.
that because it doesn't give you the password. It's not that the password's set in the clear, but the cookie, the authenticating cookie, is set in the clear. And so you have the cookie. You just say I'm them.
Correct. Now, okay, there are the thing that Starbucks could do to fix this immediately, I mean, and it would be wonderful if they did, is simply to bring up WPA encryption with the password Starbucks. Doesn't have to be unknown. We don't have to have per user passwords or anything. We already discussed how WPA provides inter-client isolation. We discussed this a couple months ago under a different context. So right now, you walk into Starbucks and you're online. They're unencrypted and they're open.
So use WPA.
Yes.
You can tell everybody the password, including somebody running Firesheep. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
Oh, that's a simple fix.
So it's a huge fix, and it's the kind of thing that Starbucks, that is mentioned in these articles over and over, and I keep saying their name because I'm at Starbucks all the time. I would love them to bring up WPA encryption across all of their newly free Wi-Fi and just let people know. I mean, everyone would know. as soon as you try to log on, it'll say, what's your password? Just type in Starbucks.
Put a sign over the counter.
And the problem is solved, completely solved at, period.
So if you're, I'm going to go over to my local coffee shop. My friends over at the bakery over here have, in fact, everybody in town now has Wi-Fi, open Wi-Fi. And just say, this is all you have to do. Please do this.
Yes.
Use the name of the establishment as the password, and it would fix it.
Well, and in fact, Leo, have this installed on your Mac, walk over there, show them that right now.
Oh, that's a good idea.
All the users that are using it are exposed because they're using their Wi-Fi, and tell them it's this easy to fix it.
Now, if I logged in as somebody using the cookie, let's say I got into their Facebook account, could I just change their password?
Absolutely. You're them. I mean, we're talking, this is havoc. This is chaos.
Wow. Now, some sites would say, well, what's your original password now, and would need that.
Ah, good point. Yes.
So you hope that they do things like that.
Yes.
Good Lord. But even if they can't change your password, they can read everything as if they're you.
They could change your photos. They could, change your privacy settings, drop all your privacy to 0.
Oh, this is horrible.
It's horrible.
We're going to see people using this like crazy.
I know. I mean, what's the download count now?
It's like the count and the amount. Let me go back. See downloads. It was 325,985. I think thanks to this show alone, you probably 327,940. Another 2,000 people have downloaded it just since we looked last time.
Yeah, it's gonna go exponential, Leo. Yeah, and again, this is just the first. Now that this concept is out, we're gonna see it go like crazy. And so the thing that the remediation for the wireless access providers simply bring up encryption, finally. And again, it doesn't have to be a secret password. Just Starbucks can make it Starbucks. And that solves the problem. However, the providers of these services, the Facebook, the Twitter, the MySpace, and so forth, they can't rely on that. They have to simply enforce SSL, just like Google did. While you were reading that last sponsorship spot, I went over to docs.google.com, which I had just been using to prepare the docs for this, and tried to remove the S from HTTP, and it redirected me right back over to HTTPS, forcing me to have a secure connection while I was doing these things. So Google is enforcing it. There's no reason everyone isn't.
Yeah, nowadays, machines are, even these netbooks are fast enough to do SSL full time.
Actually, there's never been a question. Remember that, I mean, and I've already seen this by people who aren't up to speed on encryption. SSL used to be expensive back with HTTP 1.0 when browsers were dropping and re-establishing connections. Now browsers are maintaining those persistent connections to web servers. The only expense is during the public key negotiation at the beginning of a transaction, and SSL now caches credentials. So even browsers that drop connections and reconnect, you're able to use a cached credential. The overhead is negligible because of other advances that have been made in the protocols. So it's not expensive for the end user, and it's not even expensive for the aggregation of all those connections at the server. There's just no reason not to do it.
Wow, very interesting.
And this is, I'm sure we'll have some news next week, because this thing is.
Well, yeah, I think everybody.
Nuts.
I mean, if you were malicious, you're going to go out there and I'm just thinking. I mean, I'm using an open access point right now. I mean, holy cow, we're going to lock down our access points here at the.
Yep, just
studio.
use a simple all you have is a simple password, because as we discussed, WPA does enforce inter-client isolation. Individual clients negotiate their own private keys with the access point, even though they're using a common password. The password gets them in, but then their sessions are individually isolated. So that provides you protection against this kind of passive eavesdropping. Wow. So it's trivial for Starbucks to fix the problem, and it'd be great if they did.
Yeah, let's hope they do. And
in the meantime, Firesheep, Firefox add-on, have fun. Don't be bad with it. Don't be bad. But just have fun, because
this is. Don't be bad. I wonder how many of people in the Twit Cottage have already downloaded this. Wow. Steve Gibson is at grc.com. That's his website. That's a place you can go to get. The DNS benchmark is out in beta, and I presume that we'll talk about it.
And no, it's out of beta. It's at version 1.2. I did want to mention to our listeners, thank you for reminding me, Leo. It's linked from the main menu. It's on our freeware page. I took it public for this podcast before before Firesheep happened. And it's like, oh, shoot, now I got to wait 2 weeks. But this would be good, because our listeners ought to grab it, take a look at it, familiarize themselves with it. Frankly, I think you'll be blown away with what I did in 162K of code. And I'm going to, in 2 weeks, amazing. We will talk about all the technology that's underneath the covers there, and what it does and how it works. Truly amazing. So that's grc.com. That's where Steve lives, Gibson Research Corporation. It's also where Shields Up is, and a whole bunch of other free, useful utilities for security. And, of course, one paid utility that you must have, Steve's bread and butter, it's called Spinrite, Spinrite, the world's best hard drive recovery and maintenance utility, and you should be using it if you've got hard drives. Not on solid state, but on spinning drives, you absolutely should be using it. And when you go there, you can also visit the show notes, the 16 kilobit as well as 64 kilobit versions Steve hosts. He has small versions for people with bandwidth limitations. He also has a complete transcription of every show, which is great. That's all grc.com. And if you have a question for next week's show, because we usually do a Q&A show every odd episode, grc.com/feedback to ask that question. If you heard something today or on any show that you want to know more about, that's a good time to do that. grc.com/feedback. You can watch us do the show every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC at live.twit.tv. And join us in the chat room at irc.twit.tv. Always fun. But, of course, most people listen after the fact at your convenience just by downloading the show. Twit.tv/SN for security now. Twit.tv/SN has a list of all the different RSS feeds, the iTunes, the Zune, and all of that, so you can get it that way. Looks about 5 downloads per second right now.
Holy jeez.
328,556.
Yeah. I love this idea. I'm going to put it on the little air. Bring it over to my local coffee shop, good friends of mine, and say,
neat.
You might want to turn on WPA.
Yeah, and then just put up a little sign. Here's our password. Because, I mean, it's so easy to do. As we know, when you go to, there's an Italian restaurant that I go to, and they're encrypted. And so, the first time I walked in with my iPad, I said, oh, well, I can't remember what's your password. And I think it was like Real Good Eats or something like that.
That's great.
And it's just, they tell everybody, and that way they're not exposing their own customers to this kind of liability. So it doesn't have to be secret.
Real Good Eats, I like that. Thank you, Steve. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Leo.
Security Now.